Hi guys, good evening. Okay, so it's like 10 o'clock at night and I just got done doing this super crazy, like intense glam look. Like, what do you guys think, right? Definitely not something I would wear every day. I'm gonna move my mirror back. But I did this for my YouTube channel. So I will be working on putting together that video tomorrow. So if you are interested in how I got this like super cool, like silver black cut crease craziness, check out my YouTube channel because that's where it's gonna be. Yeah, super excited. So anyways, it's like 10 o'clock at night, waiting for the husbands to get home. So I didn't want to like waste this look, right? Like I got all done up for something, for somebody, for you guys. So anyways, so I was like, I'm not going to let it go to waste. I'm on call. I can't drink. So what am I going to do? I'm going to go live and talk to you guys what I'm going to do. So I want to talk to you guys about the book that I just finished reading. It was so good, you guys. And by read, I mean like listen to on Audible because A, I don't really enjoy reading, and B, like I don't have a lot of time to read. However, my commute to work is like 40 minutes. So that's when I get my reading in. So I saw a couple people join. Okay. So I absolutely love Audible. So I'm a firm believer in self-improvement, like whether that be you go to therapy, whether it be, you know, you read books, you listen to Audible, whatever. Like I'm not a big like, you know, fantasy, like fiction. I'm not that kind of reader. Like I like very applicable type of reads / listens. Hi, I can't see who's watching. You guys should just comment and say hello when you get here because I can't see who's watching. Facebook won't tell me. And so anyways, the most recent book that I just got done listening to, I literally just finished it tonight. It was such an easy listen. It's called A Curious Mind, The Secret to a Bigger Life. And it's written by a guy named Brian Grazer. And I actually came across this book listening to Oprah's podcast on Audible, like her Sunday morning spiritual like talk show podcast thing that she has. So she had Brian Grazer on there as a guest, and he was talking about his book. And I was like, okay, this sounds kind of interesting. So I downloaded it, listened to it in my car during my commute, and it was absolutely fantastic, you guys. I really highly recommend this book. So Brian Grazer, if you guys, I didn't know who the hell he is. I mean, unless you live in Hollywood, who's going to know who Brian Grazer is? But once they started listing all of his accolades, I was like, wow. So Brian Grazer is responsible for just movies alone. This is not even including his TV shows, he has grossed or like made just in movies alone. His movies have grossed over 50 billion with a B, okay, dollars. It's like insane. So some of the movies that you may recognize him from is, so Splash was his breakout hit with Tom Cruise. And he actually started a production company with a really good friend of his whom they still own and run to this day. He's also made movies like Beautiful Mind, Liar Liar, The Grinch, 8 Mile. I wrote some of them down so like I didn't forget. I mean, he's done like an insane, like crazy amount and very eclectic and very diverse movies and TV shows. He's also done Arrested Development. He's done the show 24 with Jack Bauer, like so many crazy different things. I think he was also responsible for Empire. I think he also did that one. So anyways, this book is basically about when he was growing up. He was never overly good at school. He now knows that he has a form of dyslexia, which I also have, and I wasn't diagnosed until I was in college. I always just thought that reading was really difficult. And turns out there's a reason for that. So I think that's another reason why I really enjoy my Audible books, because it's so much easier for me and it's a much more relaxed way to enjoy books, because it's just it takes a lot of concentration for me to read. Like I can't read in, like I literally have to be in a whiteout, no noise, or have like some type of like low background noise. I can't have anything going on around me. So his grandma would always tell him, like, you're so curious. You always ask such good questions. And she always told him that you're going to be amazing one day. Like you're going to do amazing things because you ask such great questions. And that kind of stuck with him throughout his life. And when he graduated from college and was getting ready to apply to law school, which he had no interest in doing, and he was like, I would have made a terrible lawyer. Probably wouldn't have graduated anyways. Was listening to two guys talk outside of his window about how this dude just quit the easiest job that he ever had, working at like Universal Studios, being essentially like a mail delivery man, like an internal mail delivery boy, and how easy it was. And he made all this money, and he was always around like cool people. So then Brian Grazer basically like looks up who is in charge at like Universal Studios, spends the next couple of hours calling to apply for the job, and had it within 24 hours. And the reason that he wanted the job was because he wanted to meet all these cool people. Like he was curious about what Hollywood was like and what these people were like. And so he's like, I got a summer to kill. And so he ended up getting the job. Well, so now he's delivering he's delivering like scripts and contracts and things like that to all of like the biggest names in Hollywood in like the 70s, like late 70s, and Hollywood starlets and movie stars. And he basically is like, well, I want to meet these people. He delivers like a couple of them, and the secretaries are always like, oh, okay, you can leave that here. And he's like, I really am curious to meet these people and see kind of like what they're like. So he starts lying to the secretaries and telling them, oh, no. I have to hand these personally. I have to personally hand deliver these to these people. And the secretaries just bought it and believed him. So now he starts meeting all these incredibly interesting people. And he made it a point, what I find really interesting was that from the early get-go, he made it a point to meet somebody new every day and to have a conversation, not just like a chit-chatty, hey, like a truly like interesting, curious conversation with one person a day, and like learn something new about somebody or what they do or where their thought processes come from and what makes them tick and things like that. So long story short, he ends up making like friends with the CEO and ends up becoming this like huge mega, producer. Right. But once he did that and he, had basically met all these people in Hollywood, then he started expanding and saying, who would I want to meet? And he would, like, Brian Grazer literally will spend a year or maybe better, 6 months to a year, setting up what he calls curious conversations. Like, can you imagine selling that to somebody? Like, I'd like to sit down because I'm curious. I just want to meet you. I'm just curious what you're like, right? So, but I guess, and he started doing this before he was even like big and famous. I mean, he started doing this like, when nobody even knew who he was. And he would get these sit down meetings with some really crazy people because he was just persistent, and he would call, and he's like, I would harass so many secretaries. But it's fascinating the people that he's sat down with and had conversations with, just because he was curious to meet them, and how learning what makes people tick and how their thought processes work has led to so many characters in his scripts, in his movies, it's incredibly interesting. And so he not only applies, this whole curiosity about talking to people, but he also applies it to how he manages and how he basically lives his life, and how to beat the no. So he talks about how in Hollywood, he said they should just replace the Hollywood sign with N-O, 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 because that's all anybody ever tells you in Hollywood. You want to pitch a script, you want to try and make a movie, you want to do, everybody tells you no all the time. It took him, I think it took him like 6 years from the time that he wrote Splash till the time that he actually got it produced. 6 years, because nobody wanted to make a mermaid movie. Nobody wanted to make a mermaid movie. And so a lot of the book is also about how to overcome obstacles and how to overcome the no, basically, when people tell you no. Like, how do you get around that to sort of get where you want in life and in your career? And then he also applies this whole level of asking questions. Okay. So asking questions and asking the right questions, and then being truly like invested in the answers. It was really interesting how he talked about how he applies this to his management in movies and running his business. He's like, you might be responsible for $200-300 million. You have like a, $30,000 a day budget, and you have to be able to, manage people. And when you all of a sudden have to, make the budget work, instead of, he basically says that he never tells anybody to do anything, that he wants people to be genuinely invested and genuinely want to get things done. And so by doing that, he asks questions, like, I don't know, he gives an example of like one day they're sitting in a boardroom talking about a movie that they've spent, years trying to get produced. And he basically, looks at this gal who's kind of in charge of making it, and he goes, "Do you still love this movie?" Because he knows what his answer is, but it made her think, is this really is this worth really continuing with? And he gave another great example of a movie that he was making with Tom Hanks. And basically the big wigs at, Universal's or whatever said, listen, you got to cut your budget. This is getting out of control. This is insane. You've got to cut your budget or we're shutting shit down. Get it together. And so instead of, marching on set and saying, all right, bitches. All right. No more snack bar for you, and no more, individual trailers for you. And we got to make this work. Right. No, that's not what he did. So he goes up, this is like genius. He goes up to Tom Hanks and basically says, listen, Tom, this is where we're at. I really want to make this movie work. And can you be my go-to person? Can you be my role model? Can you be my leader in this? And can you help me make this budget work? And by asking him to be that person, you're basically, the person will either tell you yes or no, right? And if they say yes, then they're going to be truly invested because they agreed to it. You didn't force them to do it. They agreed to it. And so the whole rest of the movie, Tom's basically sprinting back and forth between his trailer. He's, oh, I don't need this. I don't need that. He's setting the tone and setting the example so that everybody else wants to follow his lead. And so he doesn't have to come in and boss everybody around and be like, this is how it's going to be. He asks questions of people to basically get them to step up and to, and to make things work. Another really fascinating thing that he said in his book was with his partnership. So him and his partner have been together since the very beginning, right? Since Splash, which was made in I think, God, the late 70s, early 80s, something like that. And he's like, I never tell my partner to do anything, ever. I never tell him to do anything. I ask his opinion. You know, if we're looking at a movie script and I think Russell Crowe is going to be really good for this, I don't say, hey, call Russell Crowe, get him on the phone. Hey, we really need to get Russell Crowe for this. He's like, I don't do that. He's like, I call up my coworker, my buddy, and say, hey, how do you think Russell Crowe would feel if you called him? You know, how do you think Russell Crowe would fit for this role? And in doing that, it shows like a level of respect, and it shows a level of interest in what the person has, and it shows like value in their opinion, right? And now he's like, well, I don't know. Let me call him and find out, right? Instead of like bossing somebody around. And so it's an incredibly interesting book that spans like so many different topics in the sense of anywhere from, children being super curious to how that has rolled over into his adult life and made him like a gajillionaire, to his management style that has made him one of the most like sought after people to work with, because at the end of the book, he talks a lot about some of the really cool, curious conversations that he sat down and had. And they're not all like good. Like some of them, like people like literally get up and walk away from him. But some of the like really cool conversations that he talks about is he had a sit down with Michael Jackson. He had a sit down with Princess Diana before she died. He got to meet the guy who, I forget his name, the inventor of the polio vaccine, which is just like, that's incredible, because I don't know if you guys know anything about that, but polio was like this horrific disease that was really rampant back in the 50s. Like if there was a polio outbreak, parents would keep their kids home for like months, weeks, because if there was no cure, and it would basically eat your spinal cord. And so you would either die or be paralyzed. And there was no cure for it, right? And so this guy invented the polio vaccine and donated it to the world. He did not make a dime off of the polio vaccine. Can you even imagine today? Like, I mean, you look at that asshole who was trying to like jack up the price of those AIDS meds. Like, I mean, yeah, that's a whole nother rant. So, I mean, some of the people that he got to meet is just absolutely fascinating. And it was really interesting. He was talking about who he based Jack Bauer off of, because he had like a couple of different conversations. And he had a sit down curious conversation with the guy, chief of police, when the Rodney King incident went down. Yeah. And they had pre-planned his sit down meeting with this guy like months in advance. And the day that he has a sit down with him is the day that they had the verdict of the Rodney King thing. And they basically like announced that they would be forcing the chief of police to step down. And so, and he's like literally sitting, having his conversation with this guy when this happened. And he based a lot of the characteristics of Jack Bauer from 24 off of his curious sit down meeting with this guy. And so it's a really fascinating book, you guys. And I really recommend it. I absolutely loved it. It was just super easy. If you get it on Audible, the narration was really good. The audio was really good. It's a really fast, I think it was only like, I want to say like a 4.5 hour, not even, I think it was maybe like a 4-hour book on Audible. So, yeah, that's all I really have to say about that. But, yeah, so if you guys are looking for a really good read, I would definitely recommend, A Curious Mind by Brian Grazer. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. If you guys have any other recommendations of recent reads that you really liked, feel free to comment below. Let me know what you like. Again, I'm more into like self-help, self-improvement, autobiographies, like that kind of stuff. So not so much like fantasy kind of stuff. So if you have any of those types of books, definitely give me a shout out and hit me up a comment, because I'm always looking for new, cool, fascinating reads. So, and by reads, I mean listen.